Listen closer to this, folks.
At the end of the day, the goal is to actually buy the property, because without buying the property, 6 months down the track, if you haven't got an asset under your belt, you're in the same position, if not worse.
By you buying the property and moving on in your life tomorrow, you'll never think about that situation again. It'll probably make you hundreds of thousands of millions of dollars over a period of time, but you won't go and make that decision because of a story you've created about a scenario that had nothing to do with you.
If things do change, move with the tide. Instead of putting your back up against a wall, saying, fuck you, agent.
Yeah, people take it personally, right?
Exactly.
There's so many people that get in their own way of having success. Ladies and gentlemen, Flamingo Property Investing. I'm with fucking the big dog today. Big Sam Black.
Excited to be here.
Mate, it's good to have you in the studio. Now, for context, Sam and I have known each other since 2018, 2019. Sam and I should say, were housemates. Sam was an aircraft maintenance engineer. I'll allow him to tell his story. And then Sam started day one at Henderson as our videographer, believe it or not. And now Sam runs
Before Henderson, actually.
Before Henderson.
Before, when you transitioned to
Trelleys Associates.
Yes.
And now Sam heads up our Newcastle operation. He's a shareholder in Endeavour Build. And he's been around since day one. So, mate, welcome to the potty.
Mate, appreciate
First podcast.
I know. I'm excited. It's been a long time waiting, but we're here.
We are.
And the tables have switched. I think my first podcast was with yourself, actually. So
yeah, and I was a rude cunt. I didn't pay attention. I didn't take it serious. I was playing on my phone. So as you can see, I've got my phone turned down today. So, mate, give us your 30-second story. So, obviously, now you head up Newcastle. You do hundreds of deals a year. But, not that long ago, where you were a tradie.
A tradie, mate. And I think as most stories go, you obviously leave school, you get into a job that you liked at the beginning, and then you realise, years down the track that this potential path may not get you where you want to be in life. And, getting off the tools was something that played on my mind for many years and just didn't have the right avenue, I guess, to get out of the industry. Obviously, the money that you're earning at the time seems like a lot of money, and taking that step outside of that industry,
because as a tradesperson, you obviously do your 4-year apprenticeship. Essentially, you become a fully qualified tradesperson, and then naturally you can earn pretty good money as a tradie in any industry. Correct.
There's you're on $50-$60 an hour. You can work lots of hours, and that seems like a lot of money, right? When you're sort of in that environment. But always interested in property. I don't know where that exactly came from, but I've always liked the fact that...
Well, your dad had a history in property?
Yeah, correct. But also I think growing up, there was always an interest in looking at something and seeing the potential in something. Whether I remember being young, selling my little yowies at the marketplace and stuff like that, So I've always been interested in sort of sales for somehow, and then watching stuff grow from whether it's fixing a bike or fixing a car, and now it's obviously developing property.
Now, you were the tradesperson. You did a lot of travel back in the day. Travelled all over the world. You lived in bloody India. You lived in other parts of the world. And you did buy your first property relatively young. You're in your 20s?
Yeah, 20, 25, 26 from memory. So basically, I'd always saved in school. I always had a job in high school. So when I finished school, I had, I think, $15K in the bank or something, which back then, that was
selling fucking yowies.
Yeah, selling. I was actually the
number one yowie seller in Noosa.
I was actually a dairy boy at IGA in my hometown. So I was always been really good at saving. I guess not having much money growing up. I was an only child, just single mum. So mum always drilled into me, obviously, save your money.
Yeah.
And I've always been good at that, which has been helpful with the journey I've been on. And then started, obviously, my apprenticeship, saved in that time. Then I actually had enough deposit when I finished my apprenticeship to actually go buy a property. So I was actually searching. I had a family friend who actually got me. That was one of the main drivers, who was talking about getting into the market, make sure you're buying the right property, etc. Some life things happened, and decided to quit my job and travel overseas. And
you and the misso split up.
Yeah. I'm out of here. See you later. But again, like everything happens for a reason, and I learned a lot traveling. But that deposit that I had was basically used to
spent in EOS.
Exactly.
On the cans.
Exactly. But yeah, when I came back, obviously started working again and saved up enough deposit. And in that time, that's when I actually connected with my dad, and my dad is a developer and was very adversed in the property market, and that's what sort of sparked that interest again to rip in.
And then you went to a broker, from my understanding, for the first purchase.
Family friend. It was referred on by a family friend.
Listen closer to this, folks. So the whole spiel about Jack Henderson not liking off-the-plan apartments is not just because I despise of them, because I have some personal vendetta against them. It's because I hear lots of these stories. So you went to the broker, which was a family friend.
Yeah.
The broker gets Sam approved for whatever number was, and then the broker comes up with a wonderful idea.
Yes.
And goes, Sam, like, you should buy. What did you...
It was off the plan. It was off the plan. And the thing was that I'd actually been... Because if you're new to property and you don't know... I didn't even know what a mortgage broker was then, right? So number one thing is that I didn't educate myself. Yeah. So that's like a big...
ChatGPT wasn't a thing back then.
Exactly. Smartphones was just coming in.
Like 10 years ago?
Yeah. So... education was a big, which I didn't do, and I'm very trustworthy. So I just listen to people, and I thought this was the right path, right? So yeah, got pre-approved. Was gonna buy I think I had $400,000, which you could buy a house in Brisbane at that
10
stage.
years ago, yeah.
And I was actually looking at houses in Brisbane, Ferny Grove and stuff like that.
Well, yeah, funny story. I did a video yesterday on a client's portfolio, and they were buying houses in Browns Plains, so like south of the river, and another suburb for, I think they bought the first one in 2015 for $275 and the second one for $330 or something in 2016. So like back then, you could buy definitely a good house, 3-4 bedroom house on good land.
Yeah. I remember looking on realestate.com and sending the links to the broker, because then you obviously don't have anyone to bounce ideas off, right? So you're like, he's the best point of contact because he's an expert. Anyways, there was a few properties he dismissed, blah, 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 blah. He could obviously tell that I was keen to buy, and then came up with this beauty idea that, hey, you should buy this brand new apartment off the plan. I think he was tied into the deal somehow, because he would
not think.
No, he was. He was. He was. And basically it was, you don't have to put any money down, because I had the first homeowners grant, so you got 20 grand.
Yeah.
Plus I was going to get a 20 grand K kickback from it, which obviously he was getting.
For buying the off-the-plan apartment, which was a one bedroom.
I think
ground floor or
it was ground floor. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, from memory it was. Yeah.
And you paid?
I paid $350 for it.
Mm-hmm.
$350 for it. Moved into it obviously for the first 6 months and moved out.
What suburb was it in?
Sherwood in Brisbane,
which is a good suburb.
Yeah, really good suburb.
Just
really
not good when you buy off the plan apartments.
Yes. And at the time, there was obviously a lot of towers getting built in Brisbane, and it wasn't just that a complex that didn't do well. It was all of Brisbane, all those type of high density block of units didn't do well.
So you bought it for $350. Broker said you should go buy it.
Yep.
You got a $20,000 first home buyer incentive because you were buying brand new. You also then got a $20,000 kickback from the developer / broker, which in essence you paid for anyway, because it just come out of your purchase price.
Yeah.
And your broker, I'm assuming, would have got a big lick from the developer as well for selling it.
Yeah.
So that was your first fucking...
I'm pretty sure he was actually in the development
Right,
himself.
so there you go. That's even better. That's nice, that one.
Yeah.
So you think you're doing the right thing. You actually don't know whether you bought the right property or not, because you don't know whether you bought the right property for many years after you've bought the right property, because obviously it's a long-term asset. Post that, many years later, you moved out of that property, obviously, put it into an investment, and then you moved away from Brisbane. Yeah,
moved away from Brisbane. I think I went and travelled a bit again, because it was costing me not much to hold, obviously, because I was obviously renting it out. But yeah, obviously held that for must have been circa 6-7 years, I think.
I think you sold it in 23.
Yeah.
I remember.
Yeah.
I remember the combo. So you held it until 2023. Let's assume you held it for 7 or 8 years.
Yeah.
By this stage, you'd moved to Newcastle, settled into Newcastle. You hadn't bought any other property since then, right?
No. And I'd tried to buy property before COVID, but that particular asset was holding back my serviceability. So the new amount that I was trying to borrow, I could only borrow like another $350 or something like that.
Right.
So that was affecting my serviceability.
Because you already had 300-ish or whatever it was, 280, 300 of debt in that existing apartment. So which means based on your income at the time, you couldn't borrow
Correct.
enough to go buy another really good asset.
Correct.
So I remember we spoke about it heaps when we first met because
we did.
Obviously, I was fucking the property guy and you were still in
aviation.
And I just said, mate, you need to sell that fucking shithole, cut your losses, and then move on to something else. And what did you end up selling it for in the end?
$295.
$295,000.
Yeah.
So $60,000 less than what you paid for it, and you held it for 8 years. Which is like the exact scenario that my parents went through, right?
Yeah.
Same thing, went to their accountant said, fuck yeah, you should go and buy a off-the-plan apartment because you're going to get all these depreciation benefits, which means you'll pay less tax, and it's in a growth area, being Markula, for anyone who knows the Sunny Coast Surf Air, the building. 11 years later, they sold it for less than what they paid for it.
Yeah.
So it's a common story. This is not a once or a twice off. This happens all the time, and we see it now.
Yeah.
All the time. So you went and sold that property.
And the difficult thing about that is that where a lot of people get unstuck, because there was many years that I pondered about I should fuck this thing off because it's annoying.
Because you knew it was a shit property.
Yeah, exactly. By then, I'd educated myself. I'd like, if I go to sell this, how much I'm going to sell it for? I'd look at sales. I'd like, fuck, there's no way I'm going to there's no way I'm going to break even on this.
And that broker's long gone.
Yeah,
he's taking his
gone.
cash and he's pissed off.
Yeah. And I remember what really shook me was I remember it was 2 years after I purchased it, and it was like a year after I purchased it. Then the guy above me, it was a 2-bedroom apartment, so bigger layout, sold his. He bought it off the plan, then sold it. He sold his at a loss, but it was the same price that I bought mine like a year before. So I think he sold his for $350, but it was a 2-bedroom. I was like, how the fuck did that just sell for $350 when I paid $350 for mine?
And it's bigger.
And mine's smaller and a shitter position. He was his top floor or something like that, I think, from memory. So I was like, fuck, I think I'm stuffed up here.
And was there flooding or something?
It does flood, but in that section, no.
No, right, okay.
Yeah. So I actually ticked the box on that one, which was good.
There we go.
Yeah.
Very good. And then you didn't sell it until you were in the industry.
Correct.
So essentially, just 30-second story on how Sam come into the Henderson Group. You started off as a videographer because you loved photography and videography. Because you were into surfing and stuff like that, which you used to do a lot of photography. And then 12 months in, or just over 12 months in, you got over the videography piece, and then you worked within my inner team in Sydney, because we were living in Sydney at the time. And then there was an opportunity to go to Newcastle and start running the Newcastle office 12 or 18 months later. So that's how Sam got into, I guess, property as such.
And just to go back to that, the reason that, and this is probably, if anyone's listening who's, I guess, in a job that they don't like, and they want to
people.
They want to get out.
Not you, Gabby.
I remember being at this was before I knew you. I remember going to property seminars and listening to people talk and about developing. So there was always an interest of property there. And I remember speaking to one guy, and he's like, oh, mate, like if you ever want to do well at real estate, you should be in the industry, because obviously you're going to be surrounded by that. And in my head, I was like, fuck, I don't think I could ever be a selling agent, I remember having that conversation. Anyway, fast forward, obviously, meeting Jack. There's obviously some type of energy that you give off, and I like the way that you talk.
Usually, most people think I'm a fuckwit.
Yeah, most people. But, very educational. You're always, obviously talking about property and goals, and I was like, oh, this seems pretty cool,
Sam thought I was gay when he first met me. Funny story. He come and had, an interview of flatmates to make sure we could live together, and he saw what I was wearing, and he was pretty sure that I was gay.
Yeah.
So there you go.
But
that's why he moved in.
But, yeah, I mean, it obviously takes a bit of balls to quit your job that you're so used to, earning good coin, pick up, something to be surrounding yourself with this type of person or this type of environment, and making yourself useful, and providing value. And and just I guess learning from the bottom and absorbing, and just if you're in that environment, naturally you get better, and then you can change the course as you like. But I think the key to it is just being in the right environment, and that can obviously change your life for the better.
I agree, and it was the same as me.
Or worse if you're in to drugs or something like that.
If you're in a bad environment, yeah. If you're into meth, probably want to get out of that environment. But the same thing with me. I got surrounded by Chris Gray and his group, and that's what sort of led me down this path. And you got surrounded by myself and lots of other people, and the rest is history. But then as you got into the industry, that's the interesting thing, right? You got in, you started buying property for our clients and helping them, and then you started to better understand what a good quality asset looked like versus what you had owned, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And you ended up buying your first asset in Newcastle, which was also an apartment, which is a slightly different apartment after you had sold the off the plan, right?
Correct.
What did that look like?
That was a small boutique block in the hill.
That was the first one, wasn't it? Memorial Drive?
Yep. So that was, and with anything, it's about education, right? Like when, obviously at school, you study. As I got into being an apprenticeship aircraft maintenance engineer, I was studying, so I learnt the ropes. You learn, obviously, being on the tools. As a videographer, you learn what to do, and then in property, obviously, to upskill and be knowledgeable and provide value to your clients, you're constantly educating yourself. So there was many hours on YouTube, on Spotify, just constantly listening to people talk about what is right with property. There's obviously a lot of garbage out there, but there's also a lot of gold out there as well. So I think the first couple of years, or especially the first 6 months, I was just constantly absorbing information, and then obviously working with yourself, learning how, because I was with you 24/7 pretty much. I was listening, literally
live together and work together
in person, and then editing. So it was I absorbed stuff so quickly and learnt so quickly, which was good. The first apartment was a small boutique block, and it's very similar to Sydney. You go to a cracking boutique apartment in Sydney, that's walking distance to the cafes or walking distance to the ocean. These lifestyle drivers, you walk in, it's small, it's low maintenance, and you get a really good feel of it, because firstly, there has a bit of character, has a bit of charm. But then it's the lifestyle that it provides, and that's obviously what drew me to the boutique apartments. But it's also a low risk. So what I've found is that property, as you get more advanced, it becomes more and more stressful because there's more and more moving parts. I think your first investment, just to get your foot in the game, is to buy something that's low risk. You don't have to think about it. It just sits there in the background. But at least you're in the game, right? And you don't get burnt, because you can get burnt by property pretty easily. Expensive to get in, stamp duty, the actual buying of the property, the holding costs. And then to get out of it, you got to pay the agent to sell it, and then any losses or anything like that.
Hopefully, you don't lose any money. Which,
exactly. In my case,
you had all of the above. You had bought it off the plan. You had strata and stuff as well, right?
Strata,
probably high strata.
Yeah.
Sold it for less than what you paid for it. Had to pay the agent. Plus all that jazz.
And it's hard to rip off that Band-Aid and go, fuck, there's 50, 60K down the drain, but. Plus the opportunity cost. That's the real burner. It cost me about 250K, I reckon. More.
If you would have bought at that time, what would you pay? 350.
350, yeah.
The houses that you could have bought at that time are now worth $1 million.
Yeah.
And probably were when you sold it too. So it's like a $500,000. And then you think about imagine if you couldn't due to your income by the sounds of it, but imagine if you could have leveraged off that and bought more assets.
Yeah, exactly.
But you obviously can't let that hold you back, right? Because the reality is there's a lot of people who would have made the right decision at that point in time and made a lot of money. So it's not the fact that property's fucked, it's just the fact that you made the wrong decision in property.
Exactly.
So you then went and bought another apartment, which if people usually get burnt by apartments, they're like, no more apartments are no good.
Yeah.
But you just bought the wrong apartment.
Exactly.
So you went and bought a boutique apartment in Newcastle, in the suburb of the Hill, which, we buy lots and lots of properties for clients. Literally a few hundred metres away from the apartment that I first bought when I went to Newcastle. And, within a couple of years, you held that for 24 months or something like that?
24 months. I think I purchased it for around $740, got revalued at $850 or something like that. So
you bought it in the fives, didn't you? That one?
Nah. Are you talking about?
Oh, no. Yeah, I'm talking about Beck's apartment.
Beck's apartment. Yeah.
No, but that's you talk about the one that was the first one you bought, which is in the hill, and then you bought another one in the hill, which is Beck's apartment.
Yeah.
Was that after?
Yeah, that was after.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. Beck's apartment, which I ended up buying into anyway. We bought that for like
Beck's his partner.
540 or something like that.
And then on-sold that a couple of years later for how much?
700.
That was the 7, yeah. So like off that one apartment, you made, $150,000.
Yeah.
And the other apartment which you bought first, you still hold.
Yeah, correct.
Which is worth, 800 or 900 grand.
Yeah.
Okay. And then off the back of both of those apartments, so the first one that you bought, you still hold. The second one you bought with Beck, you've now sold to free up the cash out of that. You've now went and bought a house.
Yeah. So that gave us a nice capital to basically get out of that apartment, growing family. Obviously wanted a house because there's not much you can do with the apartment in terms of like developing and stuff like that. And now this is more down the track, right? Because I'm more like experienced, more risk adverse, all that kind of jazz.
Yeah.
I've already got the 2 apartments. I want to keep one, now diversify. So use that capital, go buy a house. But this is when the market after COVID had come down a bit.
Yep.
No one was really buying. And we ended up getting that for a really good price. Now
And it was, if you would have walked through it looked like someone had just shit in the house and just wiped shit all over everything. It was like a hoarder's sort of style of house, wasn't it?
So basically, the son had been living there. The mum was in a nursing home. He had some mental illness or something like that. The place hadn't been cleaned for 7-8 years. The toilet didn't work. The backyard looked like the Amazon. You used to get stabbed by thorns if you walked in it. You couldn't open any of the doors or anything like that in the back. The kitchen had never been... It was pretty gross. When we settled on it, Beck actually burst into tears because she's like, what the fuck did we just buy? But as I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, I've always seen like there'd be ability to see something and then make it grow into something else, you know? So I saw the potential in this house, but also being in the industry and seeing properties that are run down, but looking past all that, the clutter, or if it's off market and it's not staged or anything like that.
Yeah.
If you do this, it's going to look like this.
Yeah.
And it's a pretty easy concept, but people can't get their head around.
A lot of people struggle with that, right?
Exactly.
They look at something and go, I don't know about this joint. But like fundamentally, the place that you bought was on a great street, walking distance to the shops on Beaumont Street, big block of land, R3 zoned, from my understanding as well.
Side access.
Yeah, like really tall ceilings, really high roof line. Like it had everything going for it.
It's a perfect accelerator.
Yeah, literally. The perfect accelerator. If you scroll back through my Instagram many years, you'll see the video that I did when you bought it. And now you've gone through and you haven't really done a huge... I mean, you've done some work to it, but it's not like a fucking knockdown rebuild.
No.
Painted.
Flooring, lights, cleaned up landscaping, put a deck on, updated the bathroom, the kitchen, changed the laundry, wardrobe, stuff like plantation shutters. Nothing too major.
Yeah.
But completely looks like a different
new
home.
house. Yeah. Where if someone walked through it now, it's what'd you buy for? $1 million? Or just under $1 million?
1.1.
Oh, 1.1.
1.1.
And now it's worth what, 1.5?
Yeah.
So, from essentially holding a property for 7 or 8 years, making no money and actually losing money, to within say 4 or 5 years making hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars by just simply buying the right assets.
Correct.
But obviously we've had a somewhat good market in that period of time. COVID was good and bad because there was parts of the market that suffered.
That was
during
after COVID. The
purchase.
The house purchase was after COVID. Correct.
Yeah, so that money's been made without a boom in the marketplace.
The apartment definitely through COVID.
Yeah, and now off the back of that, that's now led into an office purchase in Newcastle. So the equity that you've created out of both of those properties, you're now using to fund an office purchase of $3+ million transaction value.
Pretty hard to save circa 400k in
that period of time.
Plus
post tax as well, right? It's like
plus all your outgoings that you're paying, plus your interest rates, repayments that you're paying, life, etc. So,
and now you've purchased literally hundreds and hundreds of properties for our clients in Newcastle. I would say arguably that marketplace and what's selling and on the market and for sale, coming up for sale better than anyone. And you've got a lot more experience now than what you once did.
Yeah, correct.
And you obviously pass it on to our clients. So working with all of our clients, going through, a 10 or 15 year property journey yourself from making the wrong and the right decisions. We talk all the time, and it's like there's so many people that get in their own way of having success.
Yeah.
Let's just talk specifically about property. They generally get in their own way with everything in life. But we obviously work with clients who go out there, make a decision, easy done. They buy property really quickly. And then we've got other clients, which we value just as much, but they take 6 months to purchase. They miss out on properties because they don't make decisions fast enough. They always think, oh, no, that's not worth that much. Or, oh, I don't like this because of some fucking reason that doesn't even make sense. And they're always the ones that lag and make things so much harder for themselves. And if they just were like, you guys know your shit, go on, make it happen. So tell us about your experience with, literally hundreds of different personalities on a yearly basis.
Almost thousands now, I'd say. Almost thousands.
Yeah, as an organisation.
Up to now, 1,000, yeah. My biggest takeaway from dealing with, people, all different shapes and sizes, personalities, you really get to see what works and what doesn't. And I always take away like, oh, that personality I really resonated with. I want to be more like that. Or this personality doesn't really work in terms of like where I want to go. Yeah. Probably don't go down that path. And the biggest thing is obviously someone's paying you, money to use your expertise. I would probably take their advice,
Yeah, well, you listen to the fucking broker and you weren't paying them anything.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Free advice is generally the most expensive advice.
Exactly. So inaction for me is like the biggest thing because, I've had clients that, have been looking for many years before they came on, come use our services, super hard to buy, and the market can shift within probably, you can sense it within a couple of weeks, but it can be a completely different marketplace within a couple of months.
Yeah, well, you look right now, like rates come down in whenever it was, 2 months ago, a month ago or something. Now there's like a prediction of extra rate cuts and the marketplace just shifts like that. It's like all of a sudden buyers have urgency, they want to buy and the market can move 5, 10, 15%. It's not reflected like that. Yeah. What things would have sold for to what they are selling for now change really quickly.
Yeah, exactly. So just in that little like segment there, you can lose or gain tens of thousands of dollars in the space of a couple of months, right? Yeah. And that's inaction. But with life in general, I don't think everything is perfect. Not every property, even if it's the best property in the world, there's always going to be some things that aren't right with it, right? But you want to be able to tick the majority of the boxes when looking at a property. So for whatever reason, it's in a tricky situation and you need to sell that property. When a buyer comes through and looks at that home, they're not going, this property is shit because of this, and this reason. They want to go, wow, this property is great because of this, and this. And then they see, I don't know, maybe the laundry is not that big. They go, you know what? We don't really care about the laundry because the house is absolutely... 8 out of the 10. Exactly. Yeah. But we're going to pay a premium to get into this because it's the location that we love. It's going to provide the fun and lifestyle for our family and for our friends and for ourselves. It's close to work. It's close to transport. It's close to the schools. It's close to cafes. I can go surfing. I can go for bush. Whatever it is, that's what attracts you to being in that property.
Yeah. And a lot of people get caught up on those two things that are not right about a property. And that, I don't know about that. Let's try and find something better.
Yeah.
Let's try and find something better. And better never comes, right?
And I was going to say the beautiful thing about working for a buyer's agent is that for me, I've been doing this 6+ years now. Yeah. I've been looking years before that particular client come on, so they just come on like a short little stop of the process. Yeah. But I've seen what's been happening the last couple of years. I know what 10 Smith Street is that going to come up in the next 6 months. Yeah. 10 Smith Street pops up. You should buy this, but for them, it's if they don't take our advice, they think there's always something better because they don't know that 10 Smith Street doesn't come up every 6 months.
Yeah, and what Sam's talking about there is like, regardless if you are working with us, someone else, or you're out there in the marketplace by yourself, a lot of people think that a property pops up, and let's say it pops up in the first week of them hunting. Yeah. Just because that property pops up in the first week that you were hunting doesn't mean they're going to be one every single week pop up. Like that property might pop up first week of you, but it hasn't been something like that around for 6 or 8 months. Yeah. And people go, oh no, I want to see more options. Where it's like, just because you think there's more options out there doesn't necessarily mean there is. And if you wait for more options, let's say that 10 Smith Street sells for $1 million to use round numbers, what you'll find is the next one that pops up if it is just as good or better than 10 Smith Street, I can assure you it's not going to sell for less. It's going to sell for more.
Exactly.
Because people go, oh, 10 Smith Street's offer $1 million, so this one's got to be worth 1.1.
Yeah.
So not doing something and not taking action as fast as you possibly can is not a good thing. It is a bad thing because it's never going to be the perfect property. And if it ticks 8 of the 10 boxes, then it's just as good as 10 of the 10 boxes. And another thing is, especially when we're talking investment, another thing is what we also see is when people don't take action and it takes, let's say that 10 Smith Street pops up, they said no to that. The next one doesn't pop up for 4 months. A lot of life happens between then and 4 months, right? Your mood could change, things could change in your life. You might be not as gung-ho in buying property, whatever. The world might change and then your mindset goes, oh, maybe we won't buy right now, we'll wait. And how many times have we seen where people could have bought something, they would have made hundreds of thousands of dollars, sometimes even millions of dollars, depending on the purchase price, and they didn't buy at all because of some fucking stupid reason that they made up in their head, and now,
Trump got in, the government changed.
Yeah, like just
whatever
shit that
it was.
means nothing in the grand scheme of like your life and your goals, but like they allow those things to have an impact on the decisions that they make.
Buy a car that you shouldn't have.
Yeah, like we saw that, right? I remember that clear as day. Like we had all these properties that person could have bought, young person, and decided to go buy a brand new car and get it on a finance, and just no longer does their borrowing power exist. Where if they would have bought the property with their money, within 12 months, it would have made them $100,000, $150,000, and they could have bought 2 of the cars. It's like so bizarre. But human beings are not rational people. We're like very, we make decisions on strange things.
Yes, definitely.
Very, very strange things. What are some of the most success that you've seen with clients and people out there in the marketplace, where you're like, if you have these traits and you act like this, you're going to have the most amount of success when it comes to investing in property?
The easiest trait, or one of the best traits that I think is definitely worth like taking on board is being able to be like coachable 100%. If you like, for me, if I'm not very knowledgeable in an area, I'll try to absorb as much information. Being able to adapt if things don't go the way things are supposed to plan out. For instance, real estate, it's like a bloody roller coaster, right? Most of the time, a deal or the negotiations won't go the way that you think they're going to go, right? So being able to take that on board, be relaxed, and if things do change, just move with the tide instead of like putting your back up against a wall, saying "fuck you, agent."
Yeah, people take it personally, right?
Exactly.
So like, let's use an example. You want a certain term, and the vendor says no. Yeah. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, that's a personal attack on me. And then you're like, no, I'm not doing this because they didn't do that.
Exactly.
When like the reality is it wasn't a personal attack. They don't even know who you are.
Yeah.
Things, like you said, things can change.
Yeah. Being super flexible is key, I feel, whether it's on terms, price, the way that you're, the urgency around it. Some deals need to be super quick. Some deals take weeks, sometimes months to put together. And just trusting the process. Again, every deal doesn't go the way that you want to go. So I guess trusting the person that's looking after that purchase, whether it's your buyer's agent or your spouse or yourself, knowing that there's going to be a deal on the other side.
Yeah. Another recent example for things we don't go to plan work. We were trying to buy a property a few months back. For some reason in the vendor's life, they said yes to selling the property, and then they were like, oh, no, I can't sell it because of a capital gains tax thing. The client took that as a personal attack. They wasted our time. Yeah. No one knew who you were. Yeah. That property potentially could come back up now, but now the person, they're still trying to buy something, won't go back and purchase that property because they feel like, oh, no, I'm not going to buy that property, which will get me my outcome that I want because of a made-up story that I've created about a vendor who didn't sell it to me a few months ago and wasted my time. Exactly. Like, when you actually speak about that, like, how silly does that sound? Yeah. It's like, by you buying the property and moving on in your life tomorrow, you'll never think about that situation again. Yeah. It'll probably make you hundreds of thousands of millions of dollars over a period of time, but you won't go and make that decision because of a story you've created about a scenario that had nothing to do with you. Exactly. Exactly. So
it's really important just to zoom out and look at the situation. Obviously, making sure the property ticks the boxes, making sure the location, while we're buying this, the numbers, the price, all that stacks up. And if that all is in the box that is ticking the boxes, then all the other stuff doesn't really matter, because at the end of the day, the goal is to actually buy the property. Because without buying the property, you can hate the world, whatever, but 6 months down the track, if you haven't got an asset under your belt, you're in the same position, if not worse, because if the market moves, you're in a worse position.
Exactly.
So number one goal, obviously, buying the right property, but also securing the right property.
Yeah, getting into the market.
Exactly.
That's the key thing. And not, often we see people, I've spoken about this before on another podcast, where it's like people get caught up on like, oh no, I'm going to set this line in the sand of what I'm willing to pay for this property based on, again, something that I've just made up.
Yeah.
I'm not paying any more than $1 million for it.
Yeah.
Based on what? I just don't think it's worth more than $1 million.
Yeah.
Based on what? I just don't think it.
Yeah.
Okay. And then it sells for like 1 month.
Yeah,
and you're
yeah.
like, just because you didn't think it was worth more than $1 million doesn't mean the marketplace, right? So the key is not to get caught over like the little $1,000 here, $5,000 there. Oh no, I said I wasn't going to buy it for more than this money. Because the reality is you need to get in the market to then get the effects or the positive effects of
and
the market.
And if we're focusing this particular topic around buying the property, every agent's different. They market it, the property differently. They all do business differently. Some agents are very transactional. Some agents are very cagey. Some agents are very open. The vendor's situation may be completely different. But let's just say you see a guide of 900,000. If you're that programmed to say this property is not worth more than 900 because you saw a number say 900, and you're just going off that, very hard to buy a property, right?
That's right.
But if you're knowledgeable at the area and you see, one Georgetown Road sold for 900, this property's better, it's probably going to be more. Even though it's guided 850, there's a high chance that this is going to sell for $1 million, for example.
Just because it's listed at that price point or a guide of that price point doesn't mean it's going to sell at that price point.
So that comes down to being flexible with your thinking, but also being knowledgeable around the market and what a property's worth and not worth.
Agreed. Newcastle is a marketplace that, like you started in Sydney with me, right?
Yep.
We were working with the best agents in Australia. You Alex Phillips's, your Gavin Rubensteins, your Macleay Longhurst, all the top agents in Australia. We are buying property off them. That's where we were in Sydney. Fast market. You get an offer and accepted, and like literally within 30 minutes, like that agent's hounding you to exchange, and if you didn't exchange it, sell it to someone else. You then went to Newcastle.
Yeah.
Still a major city in Australia, but like if the real estate markets are that different.
Very different.
It's crazy. Agents operate at a different pace. They use solicitors and conveyancers for everything. Where in Sydney, the agents do everything themselves. Like they get the agreements and terms, and the agents exchange the contracts. Pest and building inspections are often always done by the agents. They can get you ready to buy a property. In Newcastle, often never. You got to do your own. In Sydney, unconditional exchanges are 99.9% of the transactions, meaning that you buy under auction conditions. Newcastle, cooling off periods. So many things are different, right? Like it's just crazy. But Newcastle's evolving a lot, right? It's like a city that is growing.
Yeah.
It's a city where the older people who have been around for 100 years are now slowly getting, replaced by the younger generation. The younger generation are operating differently. What are you seeing in the Newcastle marketplace? I guess since you've been there 5, 6, 7 years ago, you were living in Newcastle before you got into the industry, and then now in recent times that's changed the most.
Yeah, the one of the biggest things that I've noticed is the sentiment within the type of people that are living there. Obviously, a lot of local buyers still buying and paying good prices, but we're starting to see a much bigger, pool of buyers that are younger, that are hungry to get into the market, and that are buying into suburbs that, if you're a Novocastrian, are a shit suburb, for example.
Yeah. So examples for Mayfield.
Mayfield, for example. Shortland at the moment is absolutely popping off.
Yeah.
But if you thought 10 years ago or 5 years ago, you talk about Shortland, you'd go, I'd never buy there. But because of the price point and affordability and what you can and can't buy with today's money, these areas are gentrifying, and you'll notice that instead of seeing beat up Commodore or your car on stands with no wheels, you're starting to see the fancy European car or something like that. You're starting to see this beautiful house that next door is run down, but the one that you bought, it's beautifully renovated. So instead of every 10 houses that are run down, now that's starting to change. That it could be every 7 houses are starting to be renovated now.
Yeah.
And what that does, it changes the feel of the suburb, and it feels safer.
Yeah.
It feels more inviting. You drive down the street, you're like, oh, that's a beautiful house. That's a beautiful house. And it just totally changes the concept of that particular suburb. Now there's a different type of person living there. They might be entrepreneurial. They want to enjoy, whether it's a coffee down the road. So now you'll see that cafe that's super popular. I was in Lambton on the weekend, and there was this line probably 30, 40, 50 metres down the road for people lining up for coffee. And that wouldn't happen 10 years ago.
Yeah, that's right.
So, and they're all young people.
Young families,
young
earning good coin.
Exactly. And that's happening all over Newcastle.
Yeah. So, and it's not just Newcastle as well. Like we're seeing that in Brisbane.
Yeah.
Brisbane's changing dramatically. Same thing. A lot of the, less affluent suburbs generally quite, or have a stigma that, that's a rough area.
Yeah.
Changing. Gold Coast is the same, like Labrador.
Yeah.
I put a video up about Labrador and it's like, oh, fucking Stabrador. And it's like, mate, it's 15 minutes away, 20 minutes away from houses selling for $15, $20, $30 million. It's
Exactly.
like, the 60s are gone, bruh. It's not the same thing anymore.
Exactly.
And that's what you're seeing in Newcastle, right? It's like all the areas which, like Mayfield used to be known for like drugs and hookers, and it was a steel town.
Yeah.
And, like Shortland, same thing. It's like, oh, Shortland, never buy there. But if you think about Newcastle 50 years ago, you probably wouldn't buy there.
Exactly.
But Merriweather was much cheaper then, right?
Exactly.
And now it's like with urban sprawl and a younger demographic, price points going in the northern direction, these... or the suburbs that were once lower socioeconomic and for, rough people are now not those suburbs.
And also the industries are changing. We obviously got the port there as well, but education's huge in Newcastle.
The universities.
But then like medical, massive. There's plenty of, like, you got the John Hunter, Newcastle Private, the Mater. They just spent like $500 million out in the Maitland Hospital.
Yep.
So health is obviously a big driver of why people move to an area or stay in an area. Mm-hmm. But then also the local schools there. We've got some great schools. But one of the big things that we obviously always harp on about is that why does someone actually want to live in this particular area? Is it because of, the lifestyle it provides? Is it the location? Is it what you can do on the weekend? Is it because of the jobs that it provides? And I think the biggest thing, what we always talk about, is the location, right? Like, because that's the one thing you can't change.
That's right.
You can't pick up Sydney, you can't pick up Brisbane, you can't pick up Newcastle, and you can't put it in the middle of Australia. So that's the number one thing that we like to focus on. And then it's all the other attributes. What does it have? Does it have like the beach that you can go enjoy the family time with, or go surfing, kite surfing, whatever it is? Has it got the local hub or village down the road that you can do your daily shopping, enjoy your Sundays with the family?
Like Lambton, like Lamb's got a really good village. New Lambton's got a good village. Like those are things that people pay premiums to be within walking distance.
Sporting is another big thing. Sports fields, recreational. We've got reserves with Glen Rock, for example. But then you've got all the different beaches up and down the south and north of Newcastle, which I think is tremendous to have that in your backyard and be able to live. You can live in Wallsend, for example, where you can get into the market.
Which is another one of these suburbs that if you're in Overcash, you're like, oh, fucking Wallsend.
Yeah. But you can live probably 25, 30 minutes from the CBD and the beach. You can buy a property there for $750 that's, reasonably in good condition, good land size, and you can be at the beach within 30 minutes, which is crazy.
Yeah, well, it's crazy if you look at somewhere like Sydney, for example, where you're 2 hours away and to be within 30 minutes of a beach to buy a house on 300, 400, 500 square meters of land, you're talking $3 to $5 million, depending if you're like west or north. So like the lifestyle that Newcastle affords for the price point at the moment is wild. Yeah. And it's not going to be like that for very long, considering it's like one of the largest populations in Australia, 6th or 7th largest city in Australia. Newcastle Hunter is like 700,000 people. It's not going to be like that for very long.
Exactly. And then also it's like, I think people want to be living in somewhere. This is why small boutique blocks of apartments, for example, or townhomes, they do well in certain pockets of that area. But it's because of the attachment that people look at you. They go, oh, you live in Merriweather.
Status. Yeah.
Status is a huge thing, right? Whether you're in Melbourne, Sydney, or Gold Coast.
Saying you live in a certain suburb has a level of status to it, right? Because like, oh, fuck, he must be doing or she must be doing well.
Exactly. And so if you can like piggyback off these, big homes that we had like there's been sales in Merriweather, $10-11 million sales. If you can piggyback off that, indirectly, that's what's going to keep driving prices. And these people that are paying, millions of dollars to live in these awesome suburbs, they have the income to support that. And they're not just going to go sell that property for a discount because the market's crashing, for example, right?
Yeah.
They're super hard to get into. And if you want to go get into that market, you're going to be with other buyers that are competing to get into that particular property because, again, 10 Smith Street doesn't come up every 2 seconds.
Exactly. Yeah. And the higher the status of a suburb, the higher the affluence, the more scarce assets are. Like if you look at the most scarce assets or scarce suburbs, in Sydney, like a Point Piper, like a Vaucluse, like a Bellevue Hill, like a Rose Bay, like, Bronte, Tamarama, whatever it is, like there are people literally who wait 10, 15, 20 years for a house to come up on a street. And when it comes up, and this is no bullshit, like there is literally people who wait that long. I'll only buy a house on Coolong Road. I'll only buy a house on Wolseley Road. I'll only buy a house on whatever it is. And as soon as that house comes up, there's fucking 30 people who want to buy it. And when these people have deep pockets, like logical thinking goes out the window. Yeah. And that's what you want to be around. Yeah. Like there are certain streets in suburbs that always have massive prices for them. Yeah. Because people love them. Yeah, exactly. It's the best street. Yeah. It's close to the village, and telling people that you live in this suburb or on this street has a level of status for it. They're like, oh, he or she must be doing well. No different to someone driving the European car or having the Louis Vuitton handbag hanging off their arm, or flying business or first class, whatever it is, and showing people. It's like it's all status related. Yeah. And as human beings, like status is a very important thing to us, regardless if you like to admit that or not. Yeah. Yeah, and I think the world has changed as well since COVID in terms of like where you can live now. I think going back to like the office will become more of a popular thing and probably more reinforced. But you can live in Newcastle, you can work from, say, your satellite office, and you can shoot down to Sydney like I do once a week and go see the big team. But you can sort of run your business or organisation from like these cities because the reason you want to live there, affordability is one thing. And then what does it do for your life and what does it do for your family? You got a way better lifestyle. Exactly. And mate, there's big towers happening in Newcastle. There's cranes in the sky. There's infrastructure happening all around the Hunter, inside Newcastle itself. So if the government's pumping in money, that's a good sign for me that there's going to be future growth there. Agreed, and we're massive fans of it. Let's talk about renovations, value adds, developments. We obviously do a huge amount in that space. We love Newcastle for it because it is a very old city. A lot of the houses are 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 years old. Sometimes you get stuff that's even older than that. What are you seeing out there in the marketplace with what we call as an accelerator asset, and then the renovations we're doing to these properties? Property prices are high. Fuck yeah. It's hard. Trying to get them to stack is very hard. Very hard. Very hard to flip because I think after COVID, there was still a bit of like people were getting burnt by trades because in COVID you couldn't get a painter, you couldn't get a chippy, you couldn't get a plumber to fix your an issue with your house. So people didn't really want to renovate in that period, and we found there was really good buying then, but they wanted the finished product. Now that that sort of died off, and you can get in contact with your trades, and trades are potentially chasing you now for work, people are starting to look to buy these unrenovated versions because they feel like it's cheaper to buy that. Yeah. And in some instances, you can buy the finished product cheaper. Exactly. So this comes down with knowing the market, watching the market for many years, knowing like what a property's worth and not worth, knowing how much it costs to renovate. That's a big thing, right? People have no idea. And we've learnt, like we've been doing these renos now for 2 years, a lot of renovations, and it's just getting higher and higher volume. I don't think people realise what it costs to renovate. Like remember when we did our first visa, we were like, fuck, paint 20 grand, fucking kitchen this, and we thought we could do a renovation for 100 grand. Yeah. Like you can't paint a house, do flooring and renovate a bathroom for 100 grand. Like you can go get a million quotes off builders. Yeah. If you're getting a quote for 60 or 70 grand, try that builder and I guarantee you get halfway through the job and he's no longer around. Exactly. You can't do a lot for money these days. Yeah. And like we've optimized the fuck out of our processes. We have all the trades, from the vast majority of the trades internal now. We have a proper team. We do this day in, day out. And we do things very cost efficiently. Yeah. And it's really hard to find these things and make them stack. Absolutely. And I think where a lot of people go wrong is that, you spend
20 grand on a deck, they think that the builder or the carpenter's making 20 grand. Most of that is materials.
Yeah, 90% of it.
Yeah.
Most building companies would run on less than 10% net margin, and
Yeah.
most of them, I would say, would run on less than 5% net margin, which means if they're making $10 million in revenue or
Yeah.
doing $10 million in turnover, their net profit after all expenses
Yeah.
is 500 grand, which may seem like a lot of money, but for $10 million worth of exposure,
Exactly.
that's not a lot of money.
Exactly. So scaling that back to like the renovations, the key to making a renovation stack, firstly, like we do with any investment, you want to buy in the right location because that does the heavy lifting. So you're doing a $300,000 reno in one suburb may not work in another suburb
Because you're not going to get the end value.
Exactly. The difference between renovated and unrenovated, the disparity isn't there, but it costs you the same to renovate a house in Cessnock than it does Merriweather, for
And
example.
that's why we always talk, if you buy regional, to do a kitchen in a regional town costs the same as doing a kitchen in a normal place, right?
Yeah.
Except you buy a $200,000 or $300,000 regional house and you spend $30,000 on that house, that's 10% of the property's value.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Yeah. So location's key. And then it's buying the house that has a really good, I guess, canvas to work with, or a blank canvas to work with. So you're doing works that are going to increase the value aesthetically. Let's just say all the piers were cooked and you'll just spend 30 grand repairing and re-leveling. That isn't going to add
any value.
30 to 60k worth of your house, but you spent that money basically to get it structurally sound. But then if you buy a house that all the piers are screwed and you don't do, say, repair it, then you go do your bathroom and then it moves, or you have to repair it down the track, all your waterproofing, all your kit, all your hard work's gone down the drain because you've obviously moved the house.
Yeah.
So buying the actual house that you can do work to that has the minimal structural damage or structural defects to it, and doing stuff that has a really good layout that you can take advantage of that, do the painting, do the wardrobes, do the flooring, using the existing floorboards, for example, the high ceilings, the garden that you can take advantage of in terms of landscaping, all those aesthetics things is what those 1%ers is what gives you the upswing for the lowest cost,
Yeah, because you want to be able to use the majority of the work that's there, and any dollar you spend on the property ideally add some value to the property as opposed to being a sunk cost like piers or fixing a roof or something like that.
Correct.
Which is unavoidable when you're buying established homes too, right? Like there's a lot of properties that need a lot of work.
Yeah. And again, like renovating's a difficult game. I would almost say that building brand new is probably easier because there's less unknowns about it, right? Again, there's nothing there. With a renovation, you might, I don't know, take out a wall and you find there's termites there. There's a hidden cost that you didn't know about.
That's right. Or a multitude of other things that happen when you're renovating, right? Which we fucking discovered.
Yeah.
So it's not easy, and a lot of people think they can do it a lot cheaper than what they can, and we see these properties sell, and we're like, how the fuck is that person going to make any money?
Yeah.
Like by the time you buy the property, stamp duty, holding costs, do the reno, there's not a lot of cash in that, and often people don't make any money out of flipping. So flipping for us is not like a thing that we advocate for. Because unless you get lucky with a swing in the market, like you buy something at this price and then it's worth X or Y, or you're a tradesperson and you're not factoring in the cost of your own time and going, oh, you only spent fucking 30 grand on a home and I sold it for $200,000 more. I was like, no, you didn't. If you went and paid retail for that,
exactly.
You've made no money.
Exactly. That's where the flips definitely work if you're in there and you're doing majority of the work. But again, you got to take your time as a cost as well, right? And so if you're not taking that, then
you're not really. You're robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Exactly.
Mate, what else? Closing words before we wrap and go and have lunch.
Mate, closing words. I think from what I learned in this sort of journey that I've been on is that the being uncomfortable with things is a natural part of life, and the more that you can put yourself in that uncomfortable situation, whether it's buying property, whether it's going into a new job, whether it's leveraging up, holding property and owning multiple properties and developing and renovating, it's fucking stressful, right? Because a lot of money's coming out, and if you don't have the money coming in, it put pressures on your personal life.
Yeah.
So, but again, if you want to, climb the ladder and be at this sort of level that people aspire to, being in those uncomfortable situations is what I found has got me to where I want. And look, at the end of the day, I'm not like some big shot or anything like that, but my life has dramatically changed from 5 years ago to 10 years ago. And I'm in a position where I could only what I had dreamed about 10 years ago, right? But there's been a lot of like hard work in that time, and a lot of like self-reflection, a lot of time educating, watching, absorbing information from other people that I take on board, being in the right environment, not listening to the negative people. There's always negative people out there. They're going to say, you can't do this, you can't do that.
And they're usually the ones that have done fuck all.
Exactly. So, I think just constantly trying to challenge yourself with whether it's health, business, personal relationships is really key to what I enjoy about life.
Fucking oath, Black. Big journey ahead, big dog.
What's up?
Thank you. This is general advice and does not take into consideration your objectives, situation, or needs. You should consider if this advice is suitable to you or your circumstances, and please read any applicable PDS beforehand. This is a Henderson podcast production.